So in our previous session, we have seen a different type of locators. So as part of that, we have seen ID, name, linked text, partial linked text, and class name, tag name. So these are the normal locators which we have seen. And also we have seen about CSS selector, how to use CSS selector with the different combinations like tag and ID, tag and name, tag and attribute, tag class and attribute. And today we are mainly focused on XPath. So XPath is very huge concept, and there are so many things we need to discuss as part of XPath, and it is also most important locator because most of the times we use XPath to find the elements on the web page, especially complex web pages, and the elements are more dynamic, and the element values or attributes are dynamically changing at runtime. So that time we will prefer to use always XPath. Okay, so today we will discuss more about XPath, like what is an XPath, what are the different types of XPaths, and which XPath we need to use, and how to write our XPath our own, how to generate the XPaths, what are the different tools are available, and what are the different XPath functions are available. So there are a lot of things we need to discuss as part of XPath. Okay. Now let us discuss a few important things from today's session, and this will be this going to two different sessions on XPath, and today we will discuss some basics of XPath. Okay. So first of all, let us start with what is an XPath. So if I just talk about the definition, like what is an XPath? XPath is defined as XML path. So the full form of XPath is XML path. So in shortcut, we can call it as a XPath. And what is an XML path? It is a syntax or a language for finding an element on the web page using XML path expression. It is a syntax, or we can say a language for finding an element on the web page using XML path expression. That means we are going to write some expression and which is going to find an element on the web page. And XPath is used to find the location of the any element on the web page using HTML DOM structure. So here we need to understand a few important things. HTML DOM. What is DOM? Here, document object model. Because XPath works based on the DOM, not directly on HTML. So XPath is always works based on the DOM structure, not directly on the HTML. So XPath is we can simply say XPath is an address of the element. So for example, if there is an element on the web page, there should be some address on the element. Address should be there for that element. So without address, there is no element. So if there is any element on the web page, that element address should be there, and that element should be, the corresponding code should be there in the HTML, in the DOM structure. Right. So HTML can also use it to navigate through elements and attributes in the DOM. So all the statements, the DOM is something new term which we need to understand more. What is a DOM? Okay, basically XPath works based on the DOM structure. Now let me show you what is a DOM here. So if I just go back here in XPath, let me just open it. Yeah. Just look at this picture. You will be able to understand what exactly DOM means. A DOM is an API interface provided by the browser. What does it mean? Whenever you open an application on your browser, it will automatically create a DOM structure for that particular page elements. And who is doing that? The browser will do that. Browser will always have internal interface, and which is basically creating the DOM structure for that elements. But if I just look at the HTML of the page, it is HTML. Okay, it's HTML language. You can say body. First, we'll start with the HTML tag, which is a root node, and closing tag. HTML is closed. Inside this, there is a body, and inside the body, all the elements will be there, like button, input tag, like page. Everything is there inside the body. So this is a plain HTML of the web page. But our XPath won't work based on this XML. But internally, whenever you open an application or even I open the browser, which will automatically create a DOM structure for this HTML code. Right. So again, this is a render view, means which is actual application which is appeared on the web page. As a user, we can see only this one. But for this particular screen, for this particular page, this is the HTML code is written. And based on this HTML, DOM will be automatically created by the browser. So now XPath works based on the DOM structure. And how XPath works here, for example, here there is a one element here, P, demo2 ID equal to demo2. So I want to identify this element. Now, how XPath will identify this element? XPath will navigate through each and every node. We can call them as a nodes. HTML is one node, head is a one node, body, button, input, P. So these are all different nodes. NODES. So XPath will navigate through these nodes to find the element. So XPath works always based on the DOM, not on the HTML. Okay. If the browser is properly generating the DOM, then XPath properly works. Okay, so based on HTML, DOM automatically created by the browser. This is called document object model. DOM is object model, document object model. When page is loaded, the browser creates DOM of that particular page. Okay, so this is a basic understanding. Now, based on the DOM, XPath works. Now, what are the different type of XPath? This is the definition. So XPath is defined as an XML path. So shortcut, we can call it as an XPath. It is a syntax or a language for writing any element on the web page by using XML path expression. So I'll show you what is an expression, how to write an XML path expression, and so on. So XPath is used to find the location of any element on the web page using HTML DOM structure. And XPath can be used to navigate through elements and attributes in DOM. And XPath is the address of the element. This is a fundamental definition. It is an address. Simple, we can say XPath is an address of the element. Right? And sometimes the elements may not be identified by any other locators, but XPath always 100% XPath will identify the element whichever it is, wherever it is on the web page. Sometimes other locators may not properly identify this element, but still XPath will definitely identify those elements. So that's the reason it is always preferred to use XPath most of the places or most of the times. Right, so it will work very effectively, and when you compare with the other locators. Okay, so once you start using this XPath, you will know what is the main importance of XPath when you compare with the other locators. Right, so there are two kinds of XPath we have. We have two kinds of XPaths, and one is called absolute or full XPath. One is called absolute or full XPath. The second one is relative or partial XPath. Relative or partial XPath. We can normally call it as absolute and relative, or full or partial. One of the combination terms we can use. So most of the times we use absolute XPath and relative XPath. Okay. So these are the two kinds of XPath we have. Now let us see how it looks like, absolute XPath and relative XPath. Okay. So let me just go to the web page, any web page. Let me just go to our HRM web page. Okay. Okay, so let's take any other web page like this. Now, if I just look at this, there is one button is available, contact sales, right? So I want to identify this element by using XPath. So how to capture the XPath here? So we can write our own XPath, or we can capture the XPath. So I'll show you how to write the XPath manually. So that we will see slowly later. So for now, let me just get the XPath of this element. So to get the XPath of the element directly, what you can do is we can just right click on the element, right? Inspect that element, or you can just go to Selector Hub is there. So I will come to that part. So first let us inspect that element. Okay. So once you inspect it, so this is a HTML code which is highlighted. So this is a HTML code. What happens? Just a moment. So this button is disappear actually. So let me inspect this element, contact sales. Now this is a HTML code which is highlighted. Now what you need to do, just right click on HTML code, copy, and you can see two options here. Copy XPath, copy full XPath. What is a copy XPath? Which will give you relative XPath, whereas copy full XPath will give you full XPath. This is actually relative XPath and absolute XPath. Okay. So let me just copy full XPath first. Sorry. Right click, copy full XPath, and then paste it here, Control V. So this is a full XPath. So this is an example of the full XPath. I'll explain this, what exactly it is. You will be able to understand this. So this is a full XPath. Now for the same element, I want to capture the relative XPath. So this is called full XPath or absolute XPath. And now I'm just trying to get the relative XPath or partial XPath for the same element. Same. So again, inspect this element. And this is HTML code which is highlighted. Right click and copy. And here you can see copy XPath I'm using this time. Copy XPath. Now paste it over here. So this is a relative XPath. This is an example of the relative XPath. Now we can just look at both. It seems very different, right? So the last three you can see the same, but rest of them are something different, right? So this is a relative XPath. This is a partial XPath. But actually this is a combination of relative XPath and absolute XPath both. But still we can consider that as a relative XPath. Okay, so this is a relative and absolute. Instead of full XPath, partial XPath, I'm just calling it as absolute means full XPath. Relative means a partial XPath. Okay. Now this is how we can just capture the XPaths for that element. And both XPaths will find the same element. Okay. Now let us try to understand what is the difference between this absolute XPath and the relative XPath. And after that, I'll show you how to write our own XPath, how these XPaths are going to work. Okay. So if I just look at the absolute XPath, and HTML is a root tag. Inside this, it will go to body. Inside this nav, inside this div, again div2, ul3, li, array. So these are the different tags in the HTML is which is representing. So these are the different tags which are representing in HTML actually. But where is actual element? This is the actual element. If I just look at here, A is there. A is the last element. Here the element will be, we can find the element here. But before that, there are multiple tags are there. And what are those tags? So these basically nodes in the DOM structure or in HTML. And to find this element, we have to navigate through each and every tag. And here we can find that element. Now, let me just go back to the page and see here. So where is this one? HTML body now. So first it will start with the HTML. The first root node of HTML is HTML. You can just look at here. Root is a HTML. So from here, XPath will start navigating. So all the web page elements are present inside the body. Okay. So that's the reason it will go to inside HTML, go to directly inside the body. Now we are inside the body. Here it is. So inside the body, there are multiple div tags here. This is one div, second, third, and then on three div tags are there. And here there is another tag called no script, style, nav. So there are multiple things are there. But here it is captured now because this element is present here. So among all the tags, so div, no script, style, and here nav is there. So it is went here because the element is here. Now again inside the nav tag, you can see there is a one div tag. Only one div tag is there inside the nav. So you can just look at here. There is only one div tag is there. Now, again, if I expand that div tag, you can just look at how many div tags are there here inside this div. 1, 2. There are 2 div tags are there. But our element is present in the second div tag, not in the first div tag. So that is the reason it is giving div of 2. When I say 1 here, it will go to first div tag, or if I say 2 here, it will go to second div tag. So now it is going to second div tag. Among this div tag, second div tag. Now inside the second div tag, it is saying ul of 3. ul of 3. Now what is that? If I expand the div tag, we will know that. So now we can just look at here. So how many ul tags are there here? 1, 2, 3. So this is a closing tag. Okay. So every ul tag, there will be closing tag here. Ul is starting tag, closing tag, starting tag, closing tag. So in this particular div, if I expand this, 1, 2, 3. So totally 3 ul tags are there. 3 ul tags are there. Now which ul tag that element is present? In the li. So in the ul3 tag, again, there are multiple li tags are there. So first we need to go to ul3. So in the ul, 1, 2, 3. So we need to go to inside the third ul. Now we can just look at inside the third UL, we have a 4 li tags are there. There are 4 li tags are there. Now in which li our element is present? In the first li itself, our element is present. Now it will go to the first li tag and here our element is present. So now this is exactly pointing to our element. So what exactly happening in the absolute XPath or full XPath is, which is basically navigating from the root node. And finally, it will go through each and every node and finally, which will identify the element here. So this is a full XPath or absolute XPath, the first category. Okay. Now, how relative XPath works? So always absolute XPath will start from the root node, which is HTML. Whereas relative XPath or partial XPath will directly jump to that element. And again, if I just look at this anchor tag, there is only href and class is there. Other than this, there are no attributes. So how this is going, how exactly this XPath is generated? So till here is a different thing. And this is exactly same from here. UL3 li1a. So how this relative XPath directly works is it will directly jump to this element wherever it is. So which element is having ID header -navbar. So whichever element is having this ID, first it will directly go to that element. From there, it will navigate to this element. So what is that element which is having header -navbar? If I just look at here, let's go up inside the div. Now you can see this particular div tag contains a header -navbar ID, right? So this is a div tag, and inside this UL, inside this list items are there. So actually this is ID is there, but if I just go to the UL tag, so we cannot find any ID here. Even li the tags also, we don't have IDs. So whichever element is having some ID, which is taking that element as a first element from there. So this is actual element. From there, it is navigating to each and every tag again. So UL, first UL, inside this first li tag, which one? UL are 3, right? So third UL user list inside this first li. So this navigation is again same here, this part. So what we need to understand based on this is relative XPath will not navigate from the beginning. It will not start from the root node like absolute XPath. Whereas relative XPath will directly jump to the element, whichever ID is matching, like whichever element is having this particular ID, first it will go to that element. If we are looking for the same element, it will stop here itself, and this is not required. But if we are looking for some other element which is there inside this element, so we need to still navigate to inside the tags, and here we can find that element, right? So this is a relative or partial XPath. Let me show you one more. Let me just go to demo application. Okay, now we can just look at this. This is my image. So I want to find this image using XPath. So now right click here, inspect this image, and IMG is a tag name. Now we can just right click, copy full XPath. So now I copied the full XPath. So this is the absolute XPath or full XPath of the image element, right? Now for the same element, I want to capture the copy XPath. It will just give the relative XPath. So this is the relative XPath. Now again, if I just look at this, first it will go to root tag. Inside the body, there are multiple div tags are there. So it will go to first div tag. Inside this, if you have only one div tag, directly it will show you div. If you have a multiple div tags, then it will show you that number, index number. And inside this, there are multiple div tags are there. So again, it will go to third div tag. Now inside this, again, there are multiple div tags are there. So it will go to first div tag. And inside this, IMG tag is found. So this is the actual element we are looking for. So this is the absolute XPath. Now relative XPath. So in the relative XPath, IMG don't have any ID. But above this, there is one element called div, which is having ID, that is div logo. Right? So this element we can directly write relative XPath. So relative XPath always start with the //*. I'll tell you what it is. But in the relative XPath, we have to specify at least one attribute like this. Okay, and this is pointing to actually this element, not img, but inside this img is there. So slash img. So these are the few examples of absolute and relative XPath. Now, based on this understanding, let us compare actual differences between relative XPath and absolute XPath. Very important entry question. Listen carefully. The first difference between absolute and relative XPath. Absolute XPath start from the root HTML node. Absolute XPath or full XPath always start from the root HTML node, and each and every tag it will navigate through, then finally find the element. Okay, and for example, let me just give you one more example. You will be able to understand clearly. So suppose, let us say I have some element here. Let's say I have A. Inside this, I have B. Right? So here I have C. Now inside the C, I have one more node called C1 and C2. Okay, so this is a structure. Let's say this is a DOM. This is a HTML DOM. So let us consider A is a root node. Okay. Now I want to find the C1 element. This is a, let us say this is the element I want to find. Right. So how to find that element? By using absolute XPath or full XPath. How to write it? So to find this element, we have to start from the root node. So what is the root node here? A. And inside this, this element is not present in the B, right? So it is present in the C, and C is a child node of A. So B and C are the child nodes of A. So which node we have to navigate now? C, right? A/C/. Again in the C, there are two nodes are there, C1 and C2. So which one we need? C1. So C1. So this is an XPath which we capture the C1 element, absolute XPath. Okay. Now I want to capture the C2 element. Then how to write an XPath? A/C/C2. So this is the XPath which is captured the C2 element. Just it is a navigation. So XPath will always start from the root node. Okay. For example, so the C is there. So the C element is having some attribute called ID equal to some X. ID is available for the C tag. Okay. C element. Now I want to write the relative XPath for the C2 node or C2 element. Relative XPath I'm talking. So if I say relative XPath, which will not navigate from the root node. Okay. Relative XPath will not navigate from the beginning. So what it will do is relative XPath always having certain ID or attribute here. Some ID or some attribute should be there. It can be ID or whatever it is. Relative XPath works based on certain attribute. Attribute is mandatory required. So whichever attribute we specified, first it will directly go to that element or directly jump to that element, and then rest of the path will be followed. So if we want to write a relative XPath for the C2, first we need to write the relative XPath of the C, because the C is having some ID. So how to write it? // Okay. So here a C is a tag name, right? So C. Inside this, we have to specify at the rate. This is syntax of XPath. At the rate, ID equal to, I say X. I have written only this one. And this one will match with this element, C element, but not C2 element. So first relative XPath will directly go to this element. From there, we have to navigate to C2. So here we have to say C2 node. So this is the relative XPath. This is the absolute XPath. Okay. Now the absolute XPath start from the root node, whereas relative XPath directly jump to the element on the DOM because we specify some attribute there. So it will not navigate from the beginning. That is the first difference between absolute XPath and relative XPath. Now the second difference. Absolute XPath start with the single slash. Okay. And relative XPath is always starts with the double slash. Start with the double slash. Okay. Slash, single slash and double slash. That is a syntactical difference. And third difference is absolute XPath. In absolute XPath, we use only tags or nodes. We don't specify any attributes or any elements, nothing. Only the tags you can see in the absolute XPath, only the tag names. We are not specifying any attributes or any values there. But in the relative XPath, we use attributes. So it can be any attribute. We use attributes. Okay, in the relative XPath. So these are the three differences which we need to understand between absolute and relative XPath. So absolute XPath starts from the root node. Relative XPath will directly jump to the element because we provide the attribute and value. Based on that, it will directly go to that element. And absolute XPath start with the single slash, whereas relative XPath always start with the double slash. So in absolute XPath, we use only tags or nodes. Every tag is also called as a node. Normally in the HTML language, we can call them as a tags. In XML language, we can call them as a nodes. That's the only difference. And in relative XPath, we use attributes. Okay. So these are the differences between absolute and relative XPath. Now, how to write our own XPaths? Okay, how to capture the XPath automatically? I will show you that later. So before that, let us see how to write our XPaths. The next concept, how to write XPaths manually. So manually. So before, nowadays, there are so many tools are there like Selectors Hub. But before they come into market, people are trying to create XPath manually. So people are facing a lot of challenges and they put a lot of effort while writing XPath manually. Okay. So, but we need to, it's better to know how to write XPath manually. Maybe in interview, people may ask you, so how to write XPath manually, that's most important. But most of the times we automatically generate an XPaths, but sometimes even automatically, even though if you are automatically generated the XPath, sometimes if the elements are more dynamic, we have to customize that XPath. Okay. But I'll show you exactly where we have to write XPath manually and where we have to generate the XPath automatically. Okay, both the things I will cover. So listen this carefully. How to write XPath manually. First, we will understand the difficult way. Okay, then rest of the things will become very easy. So how to write XPath manually. And we already know that. So if you want to write an absolute XPath, just we need to specify the tags, only tags. By seeing the HTML, we need to go to each and every tag and we can find that element. It is very straightforward and simple. So let me just try to write XPath of some element. Okay, let me just take any other element. All right. So I can say NOP commerce. Okay. So here I have a logo element, right? So, or you can say register element. So I want to write an XPath of this register element. So inspect this element. Okay, now I want to write the absolute XPath of this registration element. As this is the actual element which we have. Okay. So always better to go from the bottom to up. Okay. If you follow this approach, it is good thing. Okay. This is the best practice. Top to bottom to top. Okay. If you start from the beginning and you cannot recognize where this element is present, if you just directly go to this element and write the tags here. So let me just write it here. Okay, so first, what is the tag here? EA. So let me write it here. And where this is present in the LI tag, right? This A is present in the LI tag. Now, if I just compress this, again, this LI is present in the UL tag, right? This LI is present inside the UL tag. But again, there are multiple LIs are there inside the UL tag. If I just write like this, so inside the LI, A is present. But again, this LI, there are multiple LI tags are there. That means list items are there. And in which LI that element is present, anchor tag is present in the first LI. So we have to specify the number here, 1. Now, this first LI is present inside the UL tag. Again, compress this UL. So there's only one UL tag is there. So we can simply say UL/UL. Now, again, where this UL list tag is present inside the div tag. Inside this div tag. And if I just compress this, again, there are 2 div tags are there, but in the first div tag, this UL is present. So here we have to say div of 1. Div of 1. We are going back. Okay. Now this is done. Now again, this div of 1, the first div, is present inside another div tag. Okay. Now if I just compress this, this is a second div tag of the parent div tag. This is second of parent div tag. So this is second one. So we have to say this one is second. Now, so this is second one of div tag. So now again go to upper div tag. This is again first div tag of a parent div tag again. So this is first one. So slash here div of first. So now go to the parent div tag again. So this is a first div tag of another parent div tag. First div tag of another parent div tag. So write one more div of 1. Okay, now we are here. So if I just compress this again, this is the only div tag which is available where under body tag. Okay, so inside the body tag, there are multiple div tags are there. This one and this one and this one. But this is a different element. You can just look at it. If I expand that body, inside the body, these div tags are there. If I just see the line also, and this div, these are the div tags. Along with this div tag, this is also present. This is a 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If I expand, there are multiple div tags are there. So how many divs are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is the sixth one, right? So let's see the div of 6 slash, and this body is present inside the header tag. So we have to say not header tag. So body is a direct tag inside the HTML. Inside the HTML, these two are the child tag. Header is different, body is different. So here we have to say body, and this body tag is present inside this HTML. So this is how we need to write Xpath manually. Xpath manually. Okay, now let us see whether it's correct or not. We can cross check. How to check it? In the HTML, you can just Control F. If I say Control F key, it will give you one search box here. So here you can check whether your CSS selector Xpath is correct or not. Just whatever Xpath you have written, just copy it here. Okay, now press Enter key. Now you can see this Xpath is exactly matching this element, highlighting with yellow color. And also it is highlighting this element also. Well, as soon as I say Enter, it is highlighting element. And also you can see 1 of 1. One element is exactly matching. Okay, so this is how we need to write our absolute Xpath. But it is somehow difficult thing, because if it is page is very smaller, you can find simple tags like this. But if your page is very lengthy, suppose if you want to find the absolute Xpath for some element in the bottom of the page, we have to write a bigger Xpath. It's very, very, very bigger. And even if you start writing that Xpath manually, somewhere, some tag, you will definitely miss it in this hierarchy. And obviously what happens, again, it is difficult. Again, we have to start from the beginning and check each and every tag correctly written or not. So that is the biggest challenge we have in writing absolute Xpath or full Xpath. Okay, so this is the Xpath which we can test it here on the box. This is the first thing. And this is the way we need to write a Xpath manually if it is an absolute Xpath. But how we can write the relative Xpath? So most of the times we will write only relative Xpath. Okay, I'll tell you why we need to go with the relative Xpath. So for that, we need to follow a syntax. So syntax of writing. If you know the syntax, you can easily write the relative Xpath. So syntax of writing relative Xpath. So syntax is, first we need to start with the double slash. And here we have to specify the whatever element we want to identify. For that element, there will be tag name, right? So that tag name we can specify. Tag name you have to specify in the bracket at the rate. Some attribute we have to say, whichever attribute is available for that element, we have to specify that attribute along with that value. So attribute equal to value also we have to put inside the single or double quotations. This is the exact syntax which we have to follow to find the relative XPath. Okay. Now let us see how to write this relative XPath. Go back to some application here. And I want to write relative XPath for this search store input box. Relative XPath I'm talking. So inspect this element, right? So this is the actual HTML code. So what is the syntax we have to follow here? First, we need to say // So what is the tag name of this element? Input. So input in the bracket. So here you can use any of the attribute. You can use class, you can use name, or you can use placeholder, anything. So here I already have ID. So let me just use this ID. How to specify? @ ID equal to specify the value. So now this is a relative XPath. So now go and check this XPath is correctly working or not. Again, Control F. And here in this box, we have to copy this. Now press enter. It is exactly highlighting the HTML code along with the element. As soon as you press enter, it is highlighting that element. So that means that XPath, what we have written is perfectly right. Okay, so this is how we need to just write relative XPath by following the syntax. And sometimes, suppose if you don't know the tag name, instead of tag name, you can simply say star. Okay, so star you can specify. So now what happens is this will go and each and every tag, and wherever this attribute found in the HTML, directly it will jump to that element, or it will jump to that particular node. Okay, so this is how we need to write a relative XPath. Later on, I'll show you more number of examples. There are different combinations of XPath, relative XPath we can write. And this is very basic and very fundamental thing which we need to understand. So far, what we understood, there are two different types of XPath. And one is absolute XPath and relative XPath. And we have seen what are the differences between absolute and relative XPaths. And also I have shown you how to write absolute and relative XPath. So whenever you want to write a relative XPath, we have to remember this syntax. This is most important. Okay. Now, sometimes it is difficult to write the XPath every time. It takes a lot of time. Okay. And we need to put a lot of effort and time consuming process. So for that, so there are certain tools are available. So by using the tools also, we can automatically capture the XPaths. Okay, there are multiple things are there. So earlier, almost 2 to 3 years back, we have something called Firebug and Firepath. How to capture the XPath automatically. So earlier, a few years back, okay, not now. So Firebug and Firepath, you may hear this term. Even if you Google it, you will see the information about Firebug and Firepath. So basically, these are the two extensions which are available for Firefox browser. You can install them in Firefox browser, and by using Firebug and Firepath, we were able to generate XPaths automatically. That feature is available, but because of some security reasons, they have deprecated both the tools. So long back they have deprecated. From the last 3 years back, it is already deprecated. So now these tools are not at all available in any of the browsers. Okay, Firebug and Firepath, it is not available now. So after that, there is one more tool is available called Selectors Hub. And before Selectors Hub, people were started using something else, because browser itself is started providing a new feature by which we will able to automatically capture the XPaths. So just now we have seen that. What is that? You can just right click on this HTML, copy, and these are the two options are available. Copy XPath, copy full XPath. So all the browsers will provide these options. Just right click, inspect on the element and copy and click on these items and paste that XPath. So every browser is provide these two built-in options. So by using these options also, we will able to directly capture the XPath. So this is one way we have. And first one is already deprecated. This is no longer available. But the second option we have is browser inbuilt option. So right click on this element, inspect, and highlight the HTML code and right click again and copy XPath. Just now I have shown you. So just try to inspect element, any element. Suppose I want to highlight something, this image. Right click on element, inspect, and HTML code is highlighted, just right click, copy, and copy full XPath or copy XPath. You can use one of them. So this is an option which is available for almost every browser nowadays. So using this built-in option, we can automatically generate XPath. This is the one option which is available. So after that, there is also one more extension is available, that is Selectors Hub. So this is a most popular extension which is available for almost every browser like Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and every browser. And this Selector Hub is having so many features, not only XPath. So by using Selector Hub, it will automatically suggest you all kinds of locator. If I just show one element, the Selector Hub will give you all kinds of locator. And if you want to use ID, this will give you ID. Which if you want to use name, this will give you ID, name. Or if you want to use link test, partial link test, CSS, XPath, whatever locator you want to use to identify that element, all the locators will automatically displayed by using Selector Hub. And not only that, it will also use it for testing the XPaths. And we can just write our locator in the Selector Hub. It will check whether it's correctly identify the element or not. So there are so many features are there in the Selector Hub. And if I just go to their official website, Selector Hub, and you can see a lot of things here. So it is basically available as a Chrome extension. This is the official website, Selector Hub. And basically Sanjay, and he is the inventor of the Selector Hub. And currently this is supporting these many browsers, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Edge, different type of browsers is supporting. And also there are so many videos are available how we need to work with the Selector Hub and everything, what it is support, what is not supported, and how many companies are using Selector Hub. Lot of information is there. Okay, so this is becomes very, very popular nowadays. Almost every tester is using the Selector Hub, especially while working with the locators concept, because it will reduce a lot of effort. It is actually it is saving a lot of time for us. Okay, so now let us see how to install this Selector Hub extension. You can install this for any browser, but most of the times we start with the Chrome browser. So let us see how to install this in the Chrome browser and how to use Selector Hub to find the elements or to generate the locators for us. Okay, now go back to the Chrome browser. Now if I just look at here, so there is something called, okay, whenever you open the web page, let me open this Orange HRM demo application. So if I just look at this, inspect this page anywhere, and normally you can see only HTML here, right? And if I just come down here in these tabs, you can see one more extension that is called Selector Hub. You can see here. Once you click on the Selector Hub, you will see the Selector Hub window. You can just close it. Okay. So this is basically Selector Hub. Okay. And how we will get this? You have to install this extension. So I'll tell you how to install this extension. So simply say Selectors Hub. You can just type Selector Hub extension for Chrome. So once you've done this, okay, so once you've done this, you can just go to this link, chrome.google.com, Selector Hub, and this is a location from where you can install. So here you can just already have my Selector Hub in my Chrome browser. That's the reason it is saying remove from Chrome. But in your case, it will just show you add to Chrome. Okay, let me just remove this for now, and I'll again add it. Okay, I removed it for now. I uninstalled it. Done. So now I don't have anything. So first time when you search for the Selector Hub, it will show you the button like this, add to Chrome. So now we need to click on add to Chrome. So once you have done it, and it will show you one more window like this, and you can say add extension. That's it. So once you add it, you can see a small icon at the top of the page, and this is basically Selector Hub. Okay. Now we can start using it. Now let me just go to the web page. And so open your application, any application. So now right click on this page like this, inspect. And now in this HTML, this is the above part is basically HTML. Okay. And here the below part is basically CSS for the page, cascading style sheet, because every page is developed by using HTML along with the CSS combination. So these are the developer tools, we can call them. And sometimes Selector Hub tab directly will show you here in this list. Okay. And sometimes if it is not appeared, you can just click on this arrow, then you will see the Selector Hub here. So you need to just click on it. So once you click on it, then it will show you here. Now we can see this is a Selector Hub. So now let me show you how to use the Selector Hub. Suppose I want to find some element. So I want to find this image. Okay. So simply click on this arrow mark and find this element. So this is highlighted in the HTML. So as soon as it is highlighted in the HTML, you can just see here, right click here. Just a moment. What happens? Just a moment. Okay. Just a moment, guys. It is hanged actually. Okay, now you can just look at this. So by default, as soon as you selected that element, it will always show you the elements. So you can just look at this. It is not giving anything for now. Let me just check it once again. Okay, just a moment, //img. And yeah, now you can see it is automatically suggesting all kinds of Xpath. So there are different options it will show you here. Suppose I want to just locate this element. So what is the tag name here? IMG is there. So I want to write my own Xpath here. So it will automatically give you suggestions. So basically I can say, and this relative Xpath will start with // right? So it actually start with the .// okay, .// and when I say what is the tag is IMG. So as soon as I say IMG, basically with this tag, there are 24 elements are there in this particular page. There are 24 elements are there in this particular page. And we need to filter them. So here bracket, use @. Now we can see there are so many Xpath which are suggesting here. Right. So which one is matching with this? We need to properly select. So if I just look at the second one, right, @class equal to nav_logo. So which is identifying only one single element. This number is representing one element, but other elements are representing some other thing. So these are different Xpaths. All Xpaths are correct. So all these Xpaths are correct, which will identify this element. So as soon as I say IMG @, which is automatically suggesting all the Xpaths. Now you can just click on it, press enter. Exactly, it is pointing one element. And it is trying to identify this element also. Okay. So this is how we need to just work with this Xpath. So it will suggest everything. So previously it was also giving all the locators, and basically there's a crow path, which is alternative, which is available, but somehow these features are not working for now. So let me just check it later. So for now, it is just giving Xpath, and even CSS also we can verify that here. Xpath as well as CSS also we can check it here, right? So this is how we can just use Selector Hub to get the Xpath for the element. So like this, you can just write an Xpath here, and you can check this Xpath is properly pointing this element or not, and you will get by default Selector Hub also giving you suggestions. You can just take one of the suggestions from Selector Hub and you can try to find that element. Okay, so actually this should give you all kinds of elements. Let me just check once again. Let me restart my browser and check once again, because just now I have installed. Just a moment. Let us try to And one more option is also there, guys. If you install Selector Hub, you can directly use this option. Right click Selector Hub option, you can see, and directly you can copy the relative XPath. So this is another option which is available. Now, for now, I'm just inspecting this. Go to Selector Hub. So write or verify XPath and say selector here. Say // and automatically it will show you. See this, I say as soon as I say IMG, it is showing. Similarly, I say input tag. So with this input, there are so many are there. So many XPaths are there. So whichever XPath is matching with that element, you can just try that. Okay, so this is how we can just work with the XPath. So here also it will show you so many other options, but it somehow it is not showing. Maybe they have done some changes. We'll look at later. Okay, so this is how basically we can also use Selector Hub to generate automatically XPath. So to generate automatically XPath, we can use this option. You can just right click Selector Hub, copy relative XPath. So by default, it is giving relative XPath. You can just copy it. But if you just want to check your XPath is right or not, you can just use this box and you can just copy it and enter, hit enter. It will show you how many elements are matching. And if that XPath is pointing to single element, which will show you one single element. Okay, so this is how we need to use Selector Hub option. So these are the two different options currently available to automatically generate the XPaths. But a Selector is having some more features. So it will automatically suggest different type of locators and we can directly get the relative XPath or we can test the XPaths. So multiple things are available and it's user friendly. It is just providing the UI and we can do that. Okay. So these are the different options are available for XPath. Okay. So now finally, one more interview question is which XPath will be preferred? So I told you two XPaths, absolute XPath and relative XPath. But which XPath will be preferred to use is an interview question. So most of the times we'll try to use only relative XPath. So we don't use absolute XPath in our projects, in our automation scripts. So immediately you will get one more question called why. Why you will use only relative XPath? Why you don't prefer to use absolute XPath? Okay, so most of the people will think absolute XPath is very lengthy and looks very ugly. And also more, it is difficult to write. So that's the reason we always go with the relative XPath. But that is just a reason for that. Okay, but that is not exact a real reason. Okay, so the actual reason is why we need to go with the relative XPath is relative XPath is more stabler than absolute XPath. Because of the two reasons, we always prefer to use relative XPath. There are two reasons are there. Two reasons to prefer relative XPath. So what are those two reasons? So the first reason is, for example, when you write your relative XPath, it will be like this, right? So in this hierarchy, if you want to get this element, we need to navigate to each and every node. That means each and every node is pointing to some element on the web page, some element. It can be simple section or division, whatever it is. And every tag is representing some element on the web page, right? Suppose while developer is working on this application, suppose he is introduced, suppose today I have written XPath for this username and absolute XPath I have written. Now the developer is introduced some other element between somewhere in the web page, right? That will automatically impact the absolute XPath, right? Because the hierarchy will be corrupted. Somewhere suppose they have implemented some other element somewhere in the between this image and this box. So obviously what happens in the HTML, there are some new tags will be added here, right? So automatically our absolute XPath will be broken. So absolute XPath is not always stable. That's the biggest reason. The first one. Okay, two reasons. What is the one reason? If the developer introduced new element, then absolute XPath will be broken. Okay, that's the one reason. And the second reason is, Suppose today this image is placed here, and tomorrow the developer is changed his mindset, and according to the requirement, the image should be, the logo should be displayed in the left side or right side, not in the middle of the page. And today we have written the XPath for this element, absolute XPath. Tomorrow it is changed in some other location. Then obviously the XPath will be broken, right? Because XPath is what? The location of the element, the address of the element. So obviously if the element location is got changed, definitely the hierarchy will be corrupted. So in that case also, absolute XPath will definitely fail. Absolute XPath will definitely fail. So the second reason, if the developer changed the location, then absolute XPath will be broken. So that means what? It is finally unstable. Absolute XPath is unstable. This is a point we need to remember. Absolute XPath is always unstable. So that is the reason we need to go with the relative XPath. So relative XPath, we don't have such problem because we are not writing all the tags here. Because we are using some attribute of that element, directly it will go to that element, even the location is got modified or location got changed or new element is introduced after some time. So it will not impact the relative XPath because attribute will not change. So that is the reason always we prefer to use relative XPath. Always we prefer to use relative XPath. Okay. So this is another important entry question you have to remember. Which XPath will be preferred? Why? Because we use always relative XPath. Okay. Now XPath, along with this relative and absolute XPath, we also have certain number of options which we can use along with the XPath. So what are the different options are available is we have different operators and functions like AND operator, OR operator, contains method, start with method, text method. So we can use all these methods along with the XPath. Okay. Now we'll see practically examples how to use absolute XPath, how to use relative XPath, how to use all these options along with the XPath. So I'll show you one simple demo and then we will try to understand. So go back to your PyChamp and let us create. So this is the theory part till now we have just completed. So now let us try to enter into the practical part. So let me just create another directory. So day 13. So let's create a new Python file. I'll name it as XPath demo. This is a Python file I created. Just a moment. Okay. Now we created a Python file. Now let us see a few examples for XPath. So before that, I'm going to use one application here to demonstrate XPath with the various versions. One second. Just a second. Okay, so let me just open the application. Go back to the, just a moment. So we are going to explore all types of XPaths in this application. Okay, so let us start writing the automation code. So as a first step, what we have to do, we have to import required packages, right? So for that, we need to just copy some piece of code here from the previous scripts. I've just copied this. So from Selenium, we are importing Webdriver module, and we are importing this service class from this particular package or module, and by class also required. And then we need to create the driver instance. So for that, what you will do, we have to say driver equal to Webdriver module. From that, we have to access Chrome class. And here we have to pass the service object. So service means what? The location of your Chrome driver. So for that, we need to first create a service object here in Selenium 4. So service is a class, specify the location of the driver, store that in an object. And this object we have to pass for service variable while creating the driver instance. Now this particular statement will launch the browser. And as soon as you launch the browser, then Let me minimize it. Okay, so then driver.get is a method in which we can pass the URL of application. So I'm just passing it here. And as soon as you open this URL, I'll try to maximize the page. How to maximize? Driver.maximize_window. So this will maximize the page. Now, first of all, let us start with the absolute XPath. Absolute XPath, and then I'll show you relative XPath. So let us start with the absolute XPath. So if I just go back to the page, so I want to identify the search box using absolute XPath. And similarly, I want to find the search button using absolute XPath and then perform the action. So how to get the absolute XPath for this element? You can just inspect that element and go to the Selector Hub. Okay, it is by default, it is not giving. We need to highlight some element somehow. Okay, so let's right click here, copy XPath, and I say driver.find element and by.xpath. By.xpath is uppercase character, right? And what is second parameter? The XPath, what we capture. So this is a relative XPath is giving, but we need full XPath, absolute XPath, right? So let us see the absolute XPath. How to capture absolute XPath? Right click, copy, full XPath. So this should give you full XPath. Okay, this is a full XPath of the element. And on this, we need to pass the text value. So send keys. And here I'm passing t-shirts. This is my value, right? So similarly, let us try to identify the second element. Go back. This is the button. As soon as you enter some value in the search box, I want to click on this search button. So now inspect this search box like this. Button is there. So now right click here and copy full XPath. And then this will also give you full XPath like this. So now we need to use it. I say driver dot again find element, find underscore element by dot XPath. And here we have to copy this XPath. And here we have to perform the click action dot click. So in the both the places for both elements, we used absolute XPath. Let us try to execute. So opens application, launching my browser, and then it opens that application. Yeah, now it is open. Now it should maximize the page. Yeah, now we can see it is enter the t-shirts and clicking on the search box. So this time we used absolute XPath, and now we got all the t-shirts information in this page. Now let us try to use relative XPath instead of absolute XPath for the same elements. Okay, let me just put it here, comment this. Now this time I want to use relative XPath instead of using absolute XPath. So what you can do is you can just inspect this element again, right click, copy XPath. Instead of copy full XPath, you can just say copy XPath and go back and specify here. Okay, so now if I just look at here, double quotations inside the double quotations are not allowed. Okay, so that's the reason we have to convert into single quotation. The attribute value always keep in the single quotation. And then send keys of t-shirts. This is the relative XPath from here to here. And you can just look at the syntax also. It is not default by default giving tag name. Instead of it is giving just a star. Star represent all the tag names, and whichever tag is having this attribute, it will go and find that element. And similarly, let us try to inspect the search box and get the relative XPath. And we can also get it from the relative Selector Hub directly. You can just right click, go to Selector Hub and copy relative XPath. So this will also give you relative XPath. So this is a relative XPath. And then click option. So in the both the elements, I have used relative XPaths. Now execute. All right, so now done. So it is enter the value, click on the search button, and we got the next page. So we use absolute XPath and also relative XPath. So apart from this, we can also use some other options or some operators along with the relative XPaths. Like we have OR operator, AND operator, contains method, starts with method, text method. There are multiple things we can use. So first, let me discuss them theoretically, and then we will use them practically. So let me go to the presentation. So we already seen this relative XPath, syntax of relative XPath. Now, so we are going to use a few operators along with the XPath. Okay. Now, if I just look at this page, so here there's a small element we have. So for this element, this is the HTML code. Okay. So we can also use OR operator along with the XPath. Suppose I can use syntax like this. If I just look at this, this is a relative XPath. Okay. So in the relative XPath, I have used multiple attributes. This is a one attribute. This is another attribute of the same element. And between these two attributes, I have used one operator called OR. So what is the use of OR operator? Suppose sometimes in the runtime, if this locator, this attribute is not working fine, or this attribute is not matching, if the second one is matching, still it will able to identify the element. That means OR operator means what? Either first attribute or first one or second one. One of them should be matched with the element. And then it will go and find the element. Either the first one or the second one. And this is also input is a tag name actually. So name is one attribute and placeholder is another attribute of the same element. So at least one attribute should be matched with the HTML or with that element. So then it will able to find the element. So that is a functionality of OR operator. Either first one, if I just consider this is the 1 and this is the 2, or you can say this is A and B. So A or B means what? Either A or B. One of them should be matched with the element, and then it will go and find the element. But when this will not able to identify the element, if both are not matching, even this attribute is also not there in HTML, and this attribute value also not matching with them. In that case, it cannot identify this element. In all other cases, either this one or this one. One of them should be matched. That is OR operator. Similarly, there is AND operator. So what is AND means what? The first attribute and the second attribute, both should be matched. If I just look at here, the first attribute is what? What is the name here? The name attribute value itself is a name. And placeholder value is a full name star, is a value of the placeholder. Now here I specified both. So this is a tag name. This is one attribute and this is another attribute. So when this will able to identify this element, if both the attributes are matching with this HTML, then only it will find the element. Even one of them is not matched, it cannot find that element. It cannot find the element. So that is a AND operator or AND. Now we'll see the practically. So in the same application, I'm just trying to use a selector hub. So what I will do is, let me just write next path for this search box element. Okay, search box element. Let us try to inspect the search box, and input is a tag name. Let me just write my own XPath here. So I say / input, and here I'm just specifying one attribute. What is an attribute? At the rate. So at the rate, I'm saying ID attribute I'm using. ID equal to search underscore query top. This is the actual XPath, which is exactly matching one element. This is fine. But additionally, I want to add one more attribute for safe side. So for that, I'm using OR operator, OR, and I can use another attribute like this. So for example, I just want to use name attribute. So here ID I already used, right? So instead ID and also name attribute also I just want to use. Name equal to search underscore query, or at the rate name, at the rate name equal to, what is the name attribute value here? Search underscore query. Say search underscore query. So this is a final XPath. So when I say enter, now it is exactly pointing to one element. Now observe this. What is R operator will do? In both attribute, one of them, at least one should be true. Then only it will identify this element. Now observe this. Currently, this XPath is perfectly correct because both are right and one element is matching. Now I'll make this name is incorrect. I'll remove this one. Still, it is able to identify the element because even though the second one is not correct, the first attribute value is correct, right? Perfectly fine. Suppose I remove the first one, some attribute value, I'm just incorrectly written. But even the first one is correct, but second one is correct. Even the first one is not correct, the second attribute is correct, but still it is able to identify the element. But now I'll also give the second one is incorrect. Now we can see 0 element is matching. That means what? OR operator, when I use OR operator, at least one attribute should be matched with that element. And then only it will able to find the element. And if both are false, then it cannot identify the element. So that is a OR operator. So now here I'm just giving rightly and then query underscore. Now it is finding the one element. So let us try to use this in our automation script. So OR operator. Simply you can use the same. And the only thing is I'm just changing the XPath in the double quotations. Okay, remove the comment. So this time I have used OR operator. Now for the second element also, we can use OR operator like this. Now inspect this search box. Now let us write our locator for the search box. So button is a tag. So / button at the rate. So do we have any attributes here? Yes, name is there, class is there, type is there, right? So we can use either any of them. So let me just put one attribute at the rate button at the rate. Okay, button at the rate. Let me just use name at the rate name equal to submit underscore search. In the double quotations, I say submit underscore search. Submit underscore search and enter. So this is a exactly matching with one element. Perfectly fine. Now, additionally, I'm just trying to use AND operator now. Let us try to use AND operator. And here I'll say again, I'll put another attribute. So what is another attribute we have? We have something called class is there. So let me use class here. Class equal to, can use single quotations or double quotations, anything is fine. Let me copy this class value and put it here and close. So now exactly it is pointing to the same element. Now observe this. When I use AND operator, the first attribute value and the second attribute value, both should be matched. Both should be matched. And then only it will find the element. Even one of them is not matched, it cannot find. So for example, instead of submit underscore search, I'm removing this part. Now the first attribute is incorrect. So it is cannot identify the element. So both should be true and then only it will able to identify the element. So that is AND operator. Now when I say enter, so this is able to find the element. Now copy this locator and then try to use it. So the second element. For the second element, I'm using AND operator. Copy this and put it here. Okay, so double quotations inside the double quotations are not allowed. So make them as a single quotation here and also here. Done. So the first element I have used OR operator. The second element I have used AND operator. Let's execute now. Okay, so now it is enter the value and also it is clicking on the search button. Yes, now we got the target page. So this is how we can just use AND OR operators. So here I mentioned So next we will see few more functions which are available, like contains, start with, and text methods along with the Xpath. So now let us discuss about contains and start with. Most important functions, contains and start with. Especially whenever you want to identify the elements dynamically, then we use either contains method or starts with method. Okay. Now let us see how we can work with the contains and the start with. It is very simple. Let me open the Paint. So I will give you one scenario here. So based on that, we will try to understand when we need to use contains and when we need to use start with method. Okay, so let us say I have one element here. Let us say a small button is available. So the button name is, initially it is a start. Initially the button is a start. Okay, so initially the button is a start button. Let us say this is my start button. So this is my start button. Now, as soon as you click on this button, immediately it will turn into stop. It will turn into stop. Stop button and start button is same. And based on the status, it will keep on changing start and stop like this. Same button. Now, whenever this button is appeared as a start button, the ID of the button is start. And whenever it is turned into stop, then immediately ID is changing as start. Stop. Okay. So when the button is start state, okay, and ID is a start. So when the button is turned into stop, then ID is again changing into stop. So the ID attribute values are dynamically changing based upon our action. This is the scenario. Now I want to identify this element using Xpath, relative Xpath. In that, I'll specify the attribute called ID. Right. So now observe this. So if I write like this, for example, I'm writing a few Xpaths here. You have to tell. So here I'm writing // Let me increase the font. Okay, so let me just increase the font. Okay, // and a tag name I don't know, or you can put button tag or whatever, and just a star. In this, I'll say @ ID equal to, I say start here. So when I write Xpath like this Xpath will match with this element only if it is in start state. Okay, if the button is in start state, ID is a start, so this Xpath will match. But this Xpath will fail if the button is turned into stop. Got my point? So this Xpath will pass only in this condition. But the same Xpath will definitely fail in this condition. Right? Suppose if I write Xpath like this. Here I'm writing one more Xpath. // star. So I'll say // star ID @ID equal to stop. Like this, I have written this Xpath. Now, what about this Xpath? So this particular Xpath will match only if the status is stop, ID is stop, but definitely it will fail if the status is first one. Right? What we need to understand based on this? So this Xpath is also not enough to identify this element. Even this Xpath also not enough to identify this element. My ultimate goal is I want to identify this element with a single Xpath in both the cases. Even if it is stop or stop, it doesn't matter. But still want to identify this element with a single Xpath, even though the attribute values are dynamically changing. That is my concept here. So for that, we can use contains or start with functions. Okay, there is another way is also there. I'll tell you that. But majority of the times we use either start with or contains function along with Xpath. So how we can use contains method? First, let us start with the contains method. So I will write one common Xpath which will match in both the cases. Okay. Now let me just write it. So here I'm writing this Xpath. Listen carefully. // star. Here I will specify contains function or contains method. Contains will take two parameters. So one is which attribute we are looking for, ID, @ID, comma. We should not say equal to here. We have to say comma. The second parameter is we need to find out some common thing which is there in both the attributes. So first time ID contains a start. The second time ID value is a stop. So what is a common thing which is there in both? In start and stop. If I just look at here, the first two characters are exactly the same. The first start ST is there. In the second stop also ST is there. So simply you can say ST here. Okay, now what contains method will do here? The contains method will just check the ID contains a ST or not. That's it. So in the first case, ID contains ST. In the second case also IDs contains ST. So both are matching or not? Exactly matching. So this is how we need to just write one Xpath to find the elements whose properties are dynamically changing. So this is how we need to use a contains method. Okay. And in this case, we can also use start with method sometimes. Okay, suppose here in both the scenarios, starting point is ST and ST only, right? So we can also use a start with method. Instead of contains, we can also use start with function. So how to use a start with? Simply you can say / star, and in the bracket, I say starts, okay, plural, starts with, which is also taking two arguments. The first argument is ID. First argument is ID and comma. What is the value of the ID? The value, single quotations we have to keep. Okay. The value of the ID is start and stop. But here we are using start with function. So both the IDs are starting with ST only, right? So you can say ST also. This works. Okay. So if both the Xpath, both the attributes starting with the same value, we can use start with function. But suppose in both the attributes, the starting point is not ST. Suppose sometimes you may not find any common thing in this, and you can find common thing in some middle of the string or at the end of the value somewhere else. In that case, contains will be used. So when I use contains, ST no need to be in the starting point. ST can be there in the middle or ST can be there at the end, where whichever place you have, you can have. That is a contains method and start with method differences. But in the start with, every attribute value should start with the ST. ID value should start with the ST. Either you can use this one or you can use this one. Contains and start with. But apart from these two, there is another way also we have. What is that? Just now we have discussed actually. We can use OR operator also. OR also we can use, right? So let me write one more Xpath. / star. Here, @ID equal to, what is the first time ID? Start, right? Start. Or second time ID equal to, stop. So either one of them should be matched, right? Either start or stop. So first condition, if the button is in start state, so start will match. If the button is turned into stop state, and then second parameter is matched, second ID will match. So either one of them is matched, then it will find that element. So this is also another way we can write a Xpath. So this is the exact situation where we have to write our own Xpath, because this type of Xpath directly cannot generate with OR operator, AND operator, if you want to use contains method. So in these cases, the default Xpaths will not generate any new Xpaths with these methods. It is just give a normal Xpath. But if you want to use some additional options along with the Xpath, we cannot use it by capturing the Xpath automatically. So we can get the Xpath automatically, but on top of it, we can add some more options. Okay, so this is the exact scenario where we go with start with and contains function. Now let me use them practically. So again, for these two elements, I'll take another 5 minutes. Contains is a one function. The other one is start with. Okay. So now let me just copy those two statements, and here we'll try to put the Xpath here and here. Okay. So now let's go to the search element. So for the search element, I will write an Xpath using contains method. Using contains method. Okay, so / input is a tag name. So let me just identify this element. Input is a tag name, / input. Here I'm using contains method. Contains @ ID. So ID contains what here? Do we have ID for this element? Yes. Search underscore query underscore top. So now here I say ID contains a search. Only I'm giving one value, ID search, and then close this function, close this bracket. Now it is exactly matching with the element. So just we provided a portion of the value of the ID. We no need to provide the complete value because we are using contains. Just what contains method will check this value is present inside the ID attribute or not. So if it is available, then it will go and match with this element. So I am just trying to use this here. Now go to the second one, the search box element. So for this button is element. So let me just try to use start with, okay, / and the button is my tag name and start with, right? So starts - with, this is the function starts with, and which attribute you want to look for. Let us say I'm trying to use name @ name, comma. Here we should not use equal to, okay, say comma, because these are the parameters of start with function. @ name, comma, and what is the value of the name? Actual name is submit underscore search, but here I'm giving just a submit because that name attribute is starting with submit. Enter. Now you can just look at this. There are two elements are matching. There is another element is also having the same string. I think some other element is also name starting with the submit. Okay, there's a problem. So what we can do is we can simply say submit underscore, add one more thing, underscore. Now it is matching with one element. Okay, so this is how we need to just differentiate. Now copy this XPath and then use it here. So in the first element, we used contain. Second element, we used starts with. Let's execute. Yes, now it is entered the value. Click on the search button. Okay, so this is how we can just use contains and start with functions. So going forward, I will show you more number of examples and then you will understand more clear. So this is a basic understanding how we need to work with XPath with the different functions. All right, so now we also have one more function called text function. And there are so many functions are there, almost 20, 30, 40 functions are there. But these are the main things which we are going to use very frequently. Okay, so there is another function called text. So we can use the text method somehow like this. Suppose I want to identify something, let's say woman tag I want to identify. So if I just inspect this element, it is just an anchor tag, right? And here the inner text is woman. So this is called inner text. So if you want to identify the element by using inner text, then we can use the text method. So how to write an XPath along with the text / the tag name is A. Right, so here I use a text function. So you can directly showing the options here. See this one element is matching. So text equal to woman. So text function we can use to identify the element based on the inner text. So copy this and try to use it. I say driver dot find underscore element by dot XPath, comma, specify that XPath dot click. So this will go and click on the woman tag. Execute. Okay, done. So now it is successfully click on the woman tab and we got the pages here. So these are the most popular functions which are used along with the XPath. So absolute XPath, relative XPath we have seen, or AND operator. Along with them we have seen here or AND operator also. Okay. contains and start with, and text function. So apart from that, there are so many other functions also there. And like we have a chained XPath. We can also combine multiple XPath. There are so many other options are there. So we will discuss them in the next session. So we will continue the XPath. So still there are so many things we need to discuss. All right, so I'll stop here. So we will continue in the next session. So practice this example, and you can just take help of Selector Hub to check your XPath is correct or not. Or else what you can do is you can just say Control F. It will give you one search box like this. And here also you can just copy your own XPath and check whether it's working fine or not. And if still want to capture the XPath of the element, you can just right click, go to Selector Hub, get the relative XPath. Or other option is you can just go to inspect the element, particular element, and whichever element you want to get, and right click, copy XPath. You can just use these options to get the next path. Okay. So this is about your today's session, and tomorrow we'll continue again with the XPath.